Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started up in just a minute or so with our executive panel discussion on all things engagement, recognition, employees in the corporation, as well as on the field. All right, welcome, everyone. We know people will be joining as we get started here today. Very excited to be sponsoring our executive panel, Lunch and Learn. Today's topic is new tips, field and corporate employees, engagement and recognition. So as people join, we want to get started with introductions. And today we have three panelists, and you have told us we want diverse backgrounds, different industries, so that's what we have. And I'm going to start with Jackie Baker. Jackie has a 20-year history with Starr Electric Company. It is part of New York Stock Exchange publicly traded Comfort Systems. Jackie is the director of HR there, and throughout her tenure and currently speaks on a great number of employee-related HR initiatives, including full life cycle of employees, diversity, inclusion. And the tagline from Starr, which has Jackie's hands all over it, is, "We exist to energize people who bring building and communities to life." So that's Jackie. In addition to Jackie, we have Darin Wolter. Darin is the Chief Revenue Officer with direct governance over a wide range of employees, in-house, outside, outsourcing, engineers, as well as sales and operations. Darin has a long history, started public traded companies like Thomson Reuters and MarketWise, and has moved in the last decade through growing very high growth tech companies, including his current role at Specright, where it's best-in-class data management platform, formerly with Pantheon Web Ops platform. So we're excited to see Darin, frequent speaker on all things employee engagement. And Leigh Baird, who is here joining us representing manufacturing and industrial. Leigh's company, Mighty Hook, where she is VP of Operations, is really a leader in industrial coating and industry. Mighty Hook has been around for 160 years, and Leigh has bringing over her great experience, customer service and otherwise, in large organizations to now helping the executive team build out culture in a smaller manufacturing-driven industry. So three diverse takes on a very important subject. With that, we'll talk about specifically what we're getting into today. So three main topics. We're going to get into, hey, how do you connect and engage employees, especially if the employees are not in the office? What do we do there? Secondly, how do we recognize and include our employees? And third, how do we measure this? How do we provide metrics for the ROI around this? So we're going to get our panelists take and a discussion on all three. And to tee this up, we want to go into what we're seeing globally. What are the stats? So my name is Matt Willis. I'm the GM North America for a company called Advantage Club, 6 million users, 100 countries. And we do an automated engagement platform recognition and rewards. So we work with Gallup and Deloitte and a lot of the bigger consulting firms. And Gallup has presented the following. It's $1 trillion problem. What that means is, hey, 90% of employees aren't engaged. 65% are looking for another job. You know, their lack of recognition is the top reason they leave. So we all understand this. If we're not engaged at work, it shows up in our productivity, lower customer satisfaction, and higher turnover. Now, a concern is if we went around the room and talked to all the different companies and everyone said, well, hey, I'm an executive, or our executives, of course we recognize employees. Of course we appreciate our employees. 85% of execs will say, yeah, we do that. But if you go to the frontline employee, say, hey, have you been recognized in the last week, month, year? Only a third will say, yeah, I've been recognized. So there's a big gap there. And 90% of employees that receive the recognition, hey, they're more motivated to put in the more effort. So there's a gap. Next slide. Now, what is the recognition crisis? We have a problem understanding we have multi-generations that are working today. So we've got the Gen Y and the Gen Z and the Millennium and the Boomers, et cetera. Gen X, different needs. We also have different functions. So if we're used to working remotely, that's different. If we are engaged with people at work, that's a different scenario. So all of this is an evolving hierarchy of needs. Our basic level is, hey, I get a paycheck and I meet with the boss and I know what I have to do. After that, today's employees need more. And if they're not getting more, they have other options and other companies that will give them more. So well-being, what does this mean? It's not just your insurance benefits. It's, do they care about my mental health? Are they caring about what I'm doing outside of work? And then that community and connection. So it is not any longer, hey, can I work from home? Yes, you can work from home, but we have people screaming, and the younger the age category, the more prevalent it is. I need to be connected. I'm not getting that connection. I'm not getting that belonging or the community. So how do we create those opportunities for community and connection? Next is appreciation. Not just the bonus, but also how do we appreciate people? And then ultimately that sense of belonging. So on that hierarchy of needs, it leads right into this slide, which is, hey, if I'm recognized, what happens? Well, I got a 5X on my feeling of connection and my contribution to this culture that I buy into. I'm more likely to be engaged. I'm less likely to be burnt out, less likely to be searching for other opportunities. And my ability to thrive in my organization is higher. So we have a crisis, there's a disconnect, and what are we doing about it? That leads us to first of 3 points today. Hey, what are we doing out there to connect and engage employees? And from a global perspective, there's kind of 5 themes that our companies are doing or working on. This is not an inclusive list, but we see, hey, the ability to provide meaningful feedback, actionable feedback in more than just a once-a-year survey, right? We see companies trying to get more feedback from more people. Then we see, hey, career development. How are we getting in on that life cycle of when an employee starts to how do we get some career training involved? Next is volunteering. Volunteering is not just outside of the organization and recognizing that, but how can we create opportunities within the organization to get involved or to move into committees and or employee groups? So not only the formal groups, diversity, inclusion, but also sports teams, cooking clubs, different types of groups that allow for engagement between fellow employees. And then finally, good old-fashioned events, fun, the barbecues, the picnics, or the virtual happy hours. So that's what we're seeing, kind of those buckets. So with that said, teeing this up, we're excited to talk with our panel, and we're going to just do this round robin. So, Jackie, we're going to start with you. And in terms of what you're seeing, industry or company or generally, what's working with engagement and community connection between employees?
Okay, well, first, thank you guys for asking me to be a part of the panel. As you stated, I've been with Starr Electric for 20 years, working in the HR arena for most of that time. And a few years, talking to some of our executives, we decided that we need to figure out what our employees truly wanted. So we started conversations, and here at Starr, we developed an employee engagement group, which is a group that we put together of peers, just basically anywhere from project managers to some of the field staff. They come together on a monthly basis and talk about, what people would like to see. So we get ideas by communicating that way. They are like the liaisons for the bigger group. We have about 500 employees. We have about 10 people on our employee engagement group, and they go out and just gather ideas and talk to people and bring it back to us. So with that being said, we've developed some of the things that you discussed, like the groups. We've developed the groups, of course, using your wonderful app. So we have sports groups, outdoor events groups. We're working on getting an employee store for our employees because they would like to see more, um, you know, get more hats, shirts, and things like that. Company events, um, just different stuff. That anything they want, we take it to our executive team and discuss it. And if it's something that would make our employees happy, we try to implement it.
Right, Darin?
Yeah, I'll try to keep this. I'm sure we'll touch on a lot of things we're doing over the next hour. It said that we're in January, so we've just gotten through a bunch of awards. I think doing awards are great, so I'll go a level deeper. I think it's important that you have awards across all functions of a business. It's common, like you have sales awards and all of that, but every function in a company should have awards and recognition. And it's tempting to just recognize top performers by specific metrics. I think the awards that people appreciate the most, I enjoy giving the most, um, are award correlated to like the company's values, like someone, and I'll touch a little bit more on that in a second. But who really lived the organization's values, or who has a big halo effect? And then I think peer awards, like allowing people to vote on who they value and explain why, those are always the coolest ones. And if you could do that at the entry level, mid, I don't think your executives need awards. And then for every function, and make as many of the team members active participants in that. I think that's really good. I touched on the values awards, and that's something I really learned like the last 10 years of my career is uh, in HR, you tend to focus on culture a lot. Um, but I think if your organization has values, it's really good to reiterate that, award those, and emphasize values. And I've gotten to the point where every functional group I manage within our company values that they develop their own, mission statement. We're sales engineering. We are the bridge between product and sales, and help the customer fall in love with our products, whatever it is. I think mission, vision, values can go really deep, and find that when folks have a voice in their function and they understand what the company stands for, they're a lot higher engaged. I did an interview last week um, for Tissa Richards. She's writing a book on resilience. And interestingly enough, the first thing she's identified is I think we can all agree that more highly engaged employees are more resilient. She cited defining values and communicating and referring to them a lot as the number one thing to drive resilience. And I think there's a dovetail to engagement there. So I have a lot more I've learned. I'd love to share with you all, but I'll stop there and turn it over to Leigh.
Thank you very
Alright, Leigh.
much. It's an honor to be here today with everyone. I think for us, engagement is such an important thing, and it's really shifted over the last decade, even in the last just few years. So for us, being in we're a small manufacturing company, but my background is also working in large corporate settings. So something for me was bringing some of those more corporate things to share with a place that really didn't have an engagement program in place. I think one of the biggest pieces for anyone, really, size doesn't matter, is the onboarding process, and having a very robust onboarding process to make that person, when they're starting, really feel welcomed and really feel like they are joining a culture that they want to be in, and that they're coming to put out as much effort as they can every day. So I think then, going along with that, something that we have established just in the last couple of years are doing career paths for everyone. And it's not a mandatory thing, but when we launched it, we had 100% participation. And I think that just goes to show that you are investing in your people, and that's giving them, I think, also from working in a small company, you may think like, well, I don't have anywhere to go from here. Like, I'm going to be in this job as long as I work here. So I think establishing that career path is really getting involved in people's interests, both inside and outside of work. But also, like, what do you want to do for yourself? Like, how can we help you grow as an individual and as a part of our company? I think that's definitely gone a long way. And we've had, for me, I see potential plant managers, I see potential team leaders, and what I can do to help them, give them the coaching and the guidance, whether it be through classes that they take or just doing more one-on-ones with that person to ensure that they are on that right path. It's also interesting to find that you get people who think they have an interest in marketing, and then here are the steps they need to take in order to achieve that. And they hit step 2, and then, whoa, okay, not for me. So then, it puts them in a different direction, but still in a positive way. Another important thing I feel that has been really engaging here is empowering decision-making, and really like coaching people through that process in how we're coming to decisions that we make. Our plant leaders didn't always have that. And so that's something we've really been working on, coaching and helping them to make decisions for their team and then for the whole department. And I think one other thing that we are doing here that's been incredibly beneficial is our plant is bilingual, to where we have a lot of employees that are only Spanish speaking. So we have offered to pay for courses to do English as a second language courses for them, so that they feel more a part of the team. And the same with the people that are only speak English. We've offered for them to enroll in Spanish classes, so that you see everybody's then practicing together, which I think is just really cool. And then, of course, we like to do a 1 or 2 out of office activity, to where everybody, this spring last fall, we took everyone to mini golf, and we did lunch and ice cream sundaes, and just a fun way to not be stuck in an office all day long, and to get out, enjoy the weather, and be on a team with people you don't necessarily work with every day. So, it's fun to come up with new things. I think the other thing with engagement is to not get stagnant with it, and to constantly be trying new things and not the same old, oh yeah, it's time to vote for the employee of the month again. I think that just people don't appreciate it as much. The recognition there, or the engagement of it isn't, hey, we're so happy to be a part of this team. It's, oh, I got to put somebody's name down on a piece of paper again. So I think just being mindful of that and asking what the employees want, what they're looking for, what makes them happy, really, really goes a long way.
Yeah, you have to make it fun.
Definitely.
We did have a quick follow-up, Darin and Jackie, for committees. So if I want to be on that engagement committee, Jackie, or Darin, if you're using values as a criteria, how does that work? Is that peer-to-peer, or is it from the exec team? How do we decide on the value-based criteria or joining committees?
Well,
Jackie, you
for
want to take
us,
it?
yeah, for us, we started out with volunteers who would like to be a part of the committee. We asked, we send it out just like a job posting, an internal job posting, and you can apply to be a part of the group. If we don't get enough volunteers, then you get voluntold. So we'll go and, throughout talking to employees throughout the, year, month, quarter, whatever, we know those who have really good ideas and who've communicated with other other employees. So we'll ask them to be a part of the group.
Great. Darin?
Yeah, I think just socializing it as broadly as possible, job posting or whatever. I think it's great if committees are have an executive sponsor but are not driven by an executive.
Yeah,
Um,
that's how we set up.
so anyone there's is generally someone is really passionate or driven around an issue. They're the right person to lead it. And it's nice to have an executive sponsor to show them the buy-in and spearhead it. And I think most of the time you're going to get volunteers. If you have too many, that's a nice problem to have. And in general, you can like pivot into, well, are you also interested in XYZ? But I've been executive sponsor across many engagement initiatives. One of them was women in the workplace. I'm probably not coming from that perspective. They chose me as executive spot, and I was blown away by what I learned and how much that team moved the needle at an organization. So I think tapping into what people care about, finding a leader, asking for volunteers, I'd be shocked if that didn't get you pretty far.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think when you ask for volunteers, people feel more valued because they feel their opinions really matter if you're asking them to join the group.
It also, if people don't volunteer, it's either they don't understand the committee, or they don't believe that they have influence. It's probably, and so if that is a challenge, um, skip downs or really pushing frontline leadership or whatever, like, hey, this is why this thing's important. And oh, by the way, uh, this team is going to get to make a recommendation that we implement, or we're going to have a deliverable. I think if people are holding back, it's probably because of one of those two things, um, and not because they're not interested. So those are probably two good when you launch something. Be really definite about what this is and sometimes what it's not. And then also like this team's going to have an impact and try to provide evidence um, of that. And I think that'll increase participation.
I think
Great.
one thing that, just to be mindful of when you're asking for volunteers with something is that you've got a firm plan in place and that it can be actionable so that the volunteers feel like, they're putting themselves out there, but they're also able to make those decisions and see them put in action. I think too many times committees get created or people volunteer for things and then it either fizzles out or they come up with a great plan and then no one is there to activate it.
Great point, Leigh. This all dovetails nicely into our next point, which is once we're engaging employees or finding ways to engage employees, how do we recognize employees? And again, there is themes that have emerged over the last 5 years in particular, but slowly over time. One is we're seeing more ways to recognize employees, more ways to appreciate employees. So birthdays, anniversaries, small and large organizations may do that on the teams, but what we're seeing is anniversaries, birthdays, customer service markers, learning and achievement certificates. We're seeing lots of different ways among different functions and groups to automate. So it comes through on the technical side and peer-to-peer see these recognition and achievements and a lot more options for those. So those service markers, time, attendance, frontline safety, those are things that, hey, a little group over here was aware of, but not everybody. And we just had a gentleman that had 45 years of service at Las Vegas Convention Center as a security guard. Well, no one in the organization had any idea. So that gets broadcast. And then all of a sudden the CEO comments. And then it's just a laundry list and a waterfall of how neat that is. So that's a recognizable appreciation that occurs where this gentleman said, hey, in the last 15 years, nobody said boo to me. So that's how we multiply that. And we're seeing many different avenues and channels to do that. And to Darin's point, contests, not just for revenue and sales, but contests around all sorts of things, values-driven contests or volunteering contests or customer support types of competition. So those are kind of the 5 areas we're seeing growth in. Again, this isn't inclusive. And we'll go around the horn. And this time we're going to start with Darin and then thoughts on, hey, where are you seeing appreciation work or that recognition work?
Yeah, I maybe Matt, if you can keep that up, just to reference. Yeah. I'll really emphasize leaderboards. And not just leaders, but like all FTE in a given function. I've seen tremendous success across that. You kind of learn that in sales where I grew up. It's very common. I have found that defining what's important, measuring it, visualizing it, and socializing it as broadly as possible keeps people really engaged. And I'm going to say something a little controversial. The stat you showed in the beginning, Matt, that 90% of employees are not engaged, 65% are looking. Those are pretty shocking stats. I think the biggest problem in that is the 25% of your employees that aren't engaged and aren't looking. Like if they're not engaged, get them out. And obviously there's things we all can do to get people engaged, but I would rather have an empty seat than I would have a non-engaged employee. Because they typically have a negative halo effect on their coworkers. So that's the 25% of that stat that really bothers me. Now, hopefully we can get that 25% engaged and of the folks looking, move the needle there. But nothing surfaced that dialogue around that like leaderboards. Who we set standards, who's meeting them, who's exceeding them, who's falling short. One, you tend to find there's a lot of peer pressure, and I think a positive way. So it's not just the manager, the director, or VP holding people accountable. Two, I think when you surface those up, people might raise their hand and say, my situation's not fair. I get more work than this other person, or I have a different territory. And I think it helps establish a dialogue on what is disengaging a person. And it could be really valid or not. Um, so I just think transparency on work performance and standards is huge. I could opine on the other four, but I'll give my co-panelists some airtime.
All right, Leigh.
All right. So, of course, in being manufacturing, safety is always a very, very high priority. So we have a counter for days without injury that we really focus on and are very proud to say we've I think we're up to almost a full year right now. So that's always something to be celebrated and to be in reminder for everyone. Sometimes that gets taken for granted. And so it's definitely the recognition of going that span of a period without a work injury really speaks volumes. And then also there's certifications when it comes to safety. So we're recognizing all of the employees that are going the extra mile to be certified, whether it be in CPR or machining safety. So another, just as again, going with manufacturing, I think continuous improvement is like recognizing our employees for figuring out new ways to make things better or to be more productive in how they're making something. We do kind of contests through that to say, okay, which department can come up with a better way to make this month? And that's it. It gets everybody involved and it starts getting people to think outside the box. And, a lot of times people will go home and come back with, guys, we got to try it this way today. I think I've come up with a great idea. So then, they're having fun with it, but they're also like thinking about it after they're here. I think another great recognition thing that I've started doing just in the past year is, and not everyone can do it, but we're a small company. So I handwrite a note to everyone on their work anniversary. And I feel like that's really gone a long way. It doesn't have to be a full letter, but just a card to thank them for their hard work and really looking forward to what the next year is bringing. And then I think the other thing that has been very impactful for me, and so I've, brought that to Mighty Hook, is recognizing people with big life events. While I've been here, I've both gotten married and had 2 children. And the way I was treated and recognized and celebrated during those times will always be in my memory. And so I am very mindful in trying to incorporate that with everyone here. We just had a young man get married about 2 weeks ago. And so, you don't have to throw a party every time this happens, but really like acknowledging it and being excited for them. Because nothing, it's so nice to then come back to work and everybody's congratulating you or tell me all about it. So I think that those small things are very impactful when it comes to recognizing employees.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. To piggyback off Leigh, just incorporating their outside family life with their work life, like she said, recognizing them, like when they come and say, my wife is having a baby, so we send an actual bouquet of flowers to the wife and a teddy bear to the kid, just to say welcome to the Starr Electric family, because we feel like your extended family is also a part of our family. It's funny, Matt, that you mentioned that there was a guy that was celebrating 45 years. We actually have an employee that's going to celebrate 45 years on Friday with Starr Electric. And, he posted on the Advantage Club site just Monday. It was like, well, why hasn't my anniversary been highlighted yet? Well, you got 72 hours, sir, slow it down. But, we're going to, of course, recognize him for his service here with us. The birthdays, people love to hear, get the happy birthday highlights or the happy anniversary highlights. But a big driver for us has been the peer-to-peer recognition. When somebody does something fantastic, whether it's safety or, being a champion on a job or, being a champion throughout the office or coming up with a great idea, just getting the acknowledgement from not only management, but the peers has been a huge driver with us. Seeing that recognition they have, it's just been phenomenal how everybody is rallied behind everybody to, cheer them on and champion them. And it's just really good.
That's great. All right, let's taking a lot of notes here. We see a little note here from Leigh to one of our employees. Thanks, I appreciate you. Those go a long way. And then the next question is, okay, lots of great ideas. Subject to how big a company are you? How big is your functional division? What can you personally do and not do? What can you use with technology versus buy-in from the management, et cetera? So there's a lot of factors that go into these tips, but it all comes down to how do we get that personal touch? How do we get that personal touch to recognize folks via their managers, via their divisions, and via other people across the organization? What we can look at is at the executive level, there has been a shift, a meaningful shift. And this really was creeping up pre-COVID, and post-COVID, it exploded. So all of a sudden you have at the board level or at the executive level, metrics that are directly related to human capital. In other words, not only is the revenue important, right, and the expenses important, but hey, in this labor shortage globally, it is really critical that we have some monitoring around our employees. So that engagement number is getting looked at, and that retention number is getting looked at, and we're seeing some functions around that. So today, can you track back retention in terms of engagement and recognition? Absolutely, you can. And a lot of different consulting firms and a lot of data out there that says, hey, for every dollar you're investing in that recognition, we're going to see a 4x return. And it goes back to the productivity, the turnover, the higher revenue, higher customer satisfaction. If we're doing career development, if we're listening to the feedback, if we are recognizing employees, giving lots of avenues for that, it pays back in spades. And how does that really correlate then to retention? Well, retention has a lot of things involved, right? It is a buyer's market, and in some areas, if you have software engineers or truck drivers or nurses, there are 5 to 10 job opportunities for every person out there in the US. So there's constant competition. Beyond that, that recognition is really the differentiator, right? Do I buy into this culture? Is there opportunity for growth? Is my manager someone that really cares about me? That has a 2x effect, right? That we're less likely to go somewhere else just for a couple 25 more cents an hour or 50 cents an hour or a bigger paycheck. And 55% of employees would reconsider leaving if they felt like that appreciation was legit, if they felt like they were being recognized. And 88% of the employees say, hey, that regular recognition, it makes them more likely to stay. And so the bottom line here, do we have actionable insight on this recognition? And if so, like our panelists have discussed, then we're going to see some real movement of the needle. And what does that mean? That means the culture, the mission, the statements we write on our website are things that are living and breathing and actionable and moving and changing. That's what makes that difference. So there is a definite direct correlation between recognition and retention.
Hey, Matt, can I pile
Sure.
on that for a second? Just real quick. Uh, I sometimes these are hard things to fund,
Mhm.
right? And whether it's a day of productivity because everyone's going to go, volunteer, or it's buying software, or awards cost money. Something that's been useful for me is calculating the cost of when someone leaves. So
Mhm.
it's the productivity when they're out. It could be impact on customers or other initiatives, and then how long it takes for someone to be productive that you bring in. Generally, like every job is different, but say it takes 3 or 6 months for someone to ramp. They're only half as productive in their first year. When you add up the costs of turnover, or even disengagement, but turnover is a little bit easier, it becomes really easy to fund this stuff. And I do recommend uh, software to help an organization manage it. But I also recommend, days off. Volunteer programs are great. Just having been on the planet for a long time, it's amazing. Like decades later, coworkers that'll reference, "Oh, remember when we did that soup kitchen, or we built limbs for kids in Africa." Like it was, that's people always hang on to that. It's just hard to fund. But I think if you can calculate the impact of someone leaving, it becomes a lot easier. It just turns into smart business, not not just good intentions.
Well said, Darin. And that leads us into really our final slide here, and then we're going to go around the horn with our panel. But at the end of the day, hey, we're focused on winning the marketplace, right? As an executive team, but that only happens today with the workplace. We got to win over the workplace, and today with multi-generations working for us, with lots of other opportunities out there, we have to be very intentional as best practices to make sure that we're executing on these great ideas. And so it takes a little bit of more engagement, that more recognition, and then the ROI behind it to measure it, to prove that out. That's when the ball starts rolling. So with that, that is our teed up portion. We're going to ask some questions here that we've received. We're getting shelled. And then after we do the questions, we're going to go around the horn with a final thoughts from our panelists. So really quick, on the first issue, or first question, this goes to all the panelists. What have you had success with in creating budget for your engagement and recognition? How did you go about doing that? We can start with Leigh and then maybe Jackie, Darin.
That's kind of a tough question for me. I definitely set aside a yearly budget as far as 2 outside employee engagement activities. Like I said, we did mini golf, we've gone bowling. I think that another good opportunity for people in larger companies would be to budget to do it perhaps by department. And maybe it's not a full company activity, but maybe everyone in customer service has an activity set aside, or everyone in the engineering department. It doesn't have to be we're going out to a 5-star restaurant for dinner. It could be, if your budget's small, make that known and be transparent with it, and then see what ideas your group can come up with, because they might come up with something that you would never think of that fits within the money you want to spend and has a big impact on your employees.
Right. Jackie?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Leah with that in regard. We have 5 different locations. So when we do our employee appreciation parties, dinners, we allow those different locations to kind of manage the budgets for the number of people in those areas. So that has been helpful. So when we go to executive team, we're not asking for a huge amount of money. We're breaking it up a little bit. So it's not a hard seller, but it really depends on, what you want to do and what your expectation is from the event or the activity that you want to implement. So, I haven't been told no yet. Maybe after this, I probably will be because they'll be like, oh, she thinks she just got a
Yeah.
budget-free zone.
I think I tip my hat on this, but yeah, calculating the cost of someone leaving generally helps. I hope my CFO is not on this call, but I hide this a lot in T&E. If you have a T&E budget, like it is easy to do. Just it's the recognition that matters. It's not the reward. And I like probably Leigh, I loved your comment about handwritten notes. Over the arc of my career, I get more texts from former employees or whatever. They're like, I remember when you wrote me that handwritten note, or they'll take a picture of it and send it to me. Like people are saving these things. What's the cost of a handwritten note?
Right.
5 minutes of your time. Uh, so I don't think the budgets have to be huge. And if you really anchor on the recognition and thoughtfulness of the award, that's probably more important than is it an all expense paid trip to Hawaii or whatever it is. It's recognition.
That's great. And then let's dovetail then. And we know it's different at small versus medium versus large versus very large, right? But in terms of benchmarking that, Leigh, Jackie, Darin, when you are at a quarterly business review with the CEO or the exec team, what ways do you measure this, or what ways do you talk about this in terms of tracking it back to what's important to the exec team? Why do we go Jackie, Darin, and Leigh?
Well, I think what we talk about more so is retention versus turnover. So when we're in a meeting and they're saying, okay, is your employee engagement group actually valuable? We can actually talk about how recognizing employees and getting their feedback and communicating with them, like Darin said, it's better to communicate and just have that retention and reward those people who want to be here. So, you'll be able to identify those, I call them ship rowers, those who are going to row the ship through any storm that you go through versus those who are just here for, a small time. So, I mean, that's what I usually tell them. Like, if we continue to do this, and then this is how we're going to benefit, because we're going to get good quality people to become a part of this team.
Right, Darin?
So I don't think I've cracked the nut on it really. I've had been a bigger company with all sorts of resources and employment engagement surveys. Now I work with a more resource constrained company. We don't have anything like that. Matt, you highlighted if you just rely on the executive team, you'd say 85% of our employees are engaged, and the reality is it's less than half that. So I think it helps to have surveys, but I've seen a lot of challenges with those. I think if you're going to do surveys and you need to be consistent, like over quarters and years and like decades. There's a lot of false positives in those surveys, and often disgruntled people are the loudest. still worth paying attention to. But I think over time, if you do it every quarter or twice a year and you're consistent, I think uh, patterns definitely do emerge. So if you're using surveys, I wouldn't over anchor on one survey, um, and just stress consistency and all of that. And then, uh, in a more recent where you don't have that, I just think really engineering meaningful time to engage with employees, uh, like spending the money to fly people somewhere or get out on the road. And if you're going to see a big client, probably many, if not most of us, have big remote workforces now. Just who else is in that area? Can I take them all out to lunch or dinner? It's like if you don't have kind of the broad-based tools to measure thing and take a really honest pulse check. And I think it's great when leadership teams get together. Um, I'd say you should devote at least 15% of your time to discussion around this. Um, whether you're talking about high performers, low performers, or engagement, anytime it doesn't have to be an executive team, but like a leadership team, I think at least 15%, if not more, should be anchored on the people. Because for most of us, people are our biggest investment. It dwarfs everything else we invest in. So hopefully that helps.
Okay. Leigh?
I'm going to agree with Darin on the surveys. So we definitely do surveys yearly, also along with stay interviews, I think are very impactful. Keep them simple and ask, the questions that you want answers to. And then when you're done, I think the biggest problem with surveys is no one ever sees the results. So publish your results. Say, okay, this is what we've heard, and this is what we're going to do about it, and then do it. Because I think then you will continue to have an active audience within your employees, and then you're going to keep getting responses, and you're going to get good and honest responses if you're showing that you're hearing what they're saying and you're actually putting action behind it. I think that another important thing is unfortunately, when you do have somebody leave, is conducting a proper exit interview and really getting to the bottom of why they're leaving, what we could have done better to keep them, and then use that information to make changes in whether it be in the engagement aspect or, is it a problem with the leadership that you have, and are they not meeting the company values that you're wanting?
Great. All right, we have about 6 minutes left. So we're going to go around the horn, 2-minute drill. And in the 2-minute drill, we're going to go backwards, Leigh. So I'm putting you on the spot. Summary for all of us and attendees, takeaways that you would recommend, or tips or tricks as a parting gift to all the folks here today. So we'll get you on the 2-minute ticker, and then I'll close you up at 2 minutes.
Sure. So I think that engaging your employees and recognizing them is a huge part of having A players on your team and within your organization. They want to be everybody wants to be treated with kindness and care and appreciation. And I think leading by example from the top down is going to retain good employees. It's going to be a place that people want to come to. I would say, since we've kind of made some shifts in what we've been doing, anytime we have an opening for a job, we have internal people bringing in their friends, their family, because it's been a great place for them to work, and they're encouraging other people. I think that's always a great sign that you're doing a good job, when you have your employees recommending their friends and family to come work there as well. I think that, especially we are all working in the office now, and so it's a little bit different for us because we're all in person and it makes it a little bit easier. So I just think spending the time talking to people, getting to know them. The handwritten notes are one thing. Another thing I didn't mention earlier was I heard a speaker talk, and she learned and adapted a process of making a Friday phone call. So every day on her drive home, she would make one phone call to someone who she had heard an impactful story about, or something that they did that was great that week. And, you know, when you think of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she called me to say like, hey, thanks for making sure that big order got shipped out on time. Little things like that really go a long way. And I think as you continue to do that and you don't let the engagement fall behind, you're going to be in great shape.
That's great. Okay, we got 4 minutes. I'm sorry, we're going Darin, and then Jackie, you close us up.
Well, I don't know if this will be a summary. I want to reiterate a couple of things my panelists said, because I wish I had said them. They're really smart. One, I think it was Leigh talked about onboarding. I got a study from Disney who has tens of thousands of employees. They spent like 5 years researching. They found the first 7 days of a new are the most impactful in terms of like engagement, long-term retention. So if you could really anchor on like first 7, 30, 90 days with new hires, I think that really pays off. I know I do a lunch monthly with all of our new hires where we talk about strategy and values. Strategy is what we're doing. Values is like our approach to our work. Uh, and I know that goes a long way. It takes me 45 minutes once a month. And it also creates a community of new hires. They might be in different functions, but they're kind of, oh, we're a team. I've got like my functional team. Now I got this onboarding team. If you can't afford to fly people to like headquarters or something like that, great. I don't think that's critical. So the first 7 days, probably 30 and 90, but don't overlook the first 7. If you're just relying on frontline management, they're probably not doing the job because they're busy. They're the most stressed out folks in your org. To that point, on training, whether you're buying new software and training people on it or bringing in external consultants, I think I would invest 3 to 5 times more in your frontline managers than everyone else. And that's where the rubber meets the rubber meets the road. When you do those exit surveys that were recommended, most of the time people leave because of their manager, whether they're willing to say that or not. So you're striking that. But if you want to implement anything, your managers not only have to be bought in, but they have to be knowledgeable, like not just what it is, but how to do it. So 3 to 5 times. And then I think communications, if you could anchor on frequency of communications, not just, oh, we've got after the board meeting, we've got a big deck that no one understands with KPIs from Wall Street or venture capitalists. I think if you can just communicate often, and that's like simplifying reviews, maybe doing 4 3-question reviews a year instead of one big one, weekly reports, and just treat people like the CEOs of their job and give them the information that they need, good, bad, or different. I think celebrating people when they leave is a good thing, but just frequency of communication over like this has to be well produced or perfect. Those are probably the 3 things I wanted to reiterate the most.
Right. Thanks, Darin. Okay, we got 1 minute wrap up, Jackie.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll be really, really quick. That's fine. So a couple of things. Number one, communicate with your employees, listen to what they have to say, and value what is being said. And number 2, small things have the biggest impact. So the handwritten notes, the happy birthdays, acknowledging the weddings, the newborns, and having the connection with them, I feel like it's the most important thing. Just being there for your employees is the biggest thing.
That's a great wrap. Big thanks to our panelists. We will follow up with everyone so you can get a copy of the deck and our recording. And once again, much thanks to Darin, to Leigh, and to Jackie. And thank you all for attending today.
Bye.